Yeah, so hey everyone. This is going to be week 4, step 7. It's the last step of week 4. It's a bit shorter than the other weeks. It's also the last step of our curriculum. So my name is Ganning, and with me I have John. So if you want to give a brief intro about yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm John Kilmister, and been a software engineer for quite some time now, working a whole host of things, and this has included working with Azure and Azure Functions. Done many different front-end apps, so hopefully I can add something to this talk today.
Yeah, awesome. Do you want to give a brief overview about like what we're going to be doing in this step? And
Yes, so previously we extended the TwoCats API to return that we wrote in order to return multiple cats. I think it was 4 with 4 different names. So today's task is to take that API and actually create a user interface for that. So we can enter the names and you can view the 4 images, as you can see in the little GIF there.
exactly. Cool. So I think actually, so I'm going to go ahead and split screen my window. And where did my VS Code go? Let me find that real quick. Oh, I might have accidentally closed it. Let me split screen this now. There we go. Can you see this?
Yeah, you can see that's our API that we had last time.
Yep, and I accidentally closed that. Okay, yep. So just now we worked on this TwoCats API endpoint. That's our backend. So after you do that, go ahead and deploy that API to Azure. And then we're going to go ahead and head into Cats app right here, like it says, Cats app, and then index.html. Cool. So let's see. What are we going to do here? First thing, make sure we're on the. I'm going to go ahead and open index.js as well, so we can on that. Cool. So first thing we have to do, make sure we're on the TwoCats front end branch. My favorite command to do that is git status. Might be a different one. It says you're on branch TwoCats front end. Cool. So clear all that, and then so that's done. Whoops. Yeah. So cool. Next thing, we can go ahead and open this up in Live Server. So Live Server is basically an extension that allows you to code HTML, and its changes are reflected across your changes. So on Mac, it's Command-Shift-P, and then that opens up this command prompt. Do you know the command for Windows?
It's just F1 in on Windows machines.
Oh, yeah, it's just F1 then if you're on Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and type in Live Server. It says open with Live Server. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. You'll see that this is our original cat.
Actually, sorry, it's not F1. It's Control P for the command.
Oh, Control P. So on Mac, it's Command-Shift-P. On Windows, it's Control P. So small difference there. But yeah, cool. So let's go ahead and just look at this real quick. It says create 4 input boxes to accept 4 names, each with an ID of name 1, name 2, name 3, and name 4. So instead of just having name right here, let's go ahead and call this name 1. John, do you want to explain like what is this input tag and like what an ID is first before we go into that?
Yeah. So each of these are elements on the page, HTML elements, and an input type will allow us to type something into a text box. So it's effectively a text box that you can see there on the left. We can have lots of different types of input. So you can have, as you can see, there we've got a button, and there are various other types as well. The ID is a unique identifier. So items on your page all have to have a unique ID. And that's why we call it, in this case, name 1, because we're going to create name 2, 3, and 4. And each of them have to be unique. We could not call it ID name, ID name, ID name on each of the 4 items. Your page would load, but it would give us some challenges when we try to actually reference each of them.
Exactly. Yeah, because IDs are unique, so you can only have one of each.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste name 1, name 2, name 3. Then just going to change the ID like that, but everything else can stay the same because what we want is 4 input boxes, right? So now you'll see that name 1, name 2, name 3, 4. An extra thing that you could do, just to give your user a better experience, I suppose you can specify a placeholder attribute right here. You can call this name 1, right? So like an input form, you'll see a placeholder, but once you type in right here, it'll disappear.
And there's lots of other, so these are called attributes that you're typing in here. So it says type equals text, that's an attribute. Placeholder, that's an attribute. And if you look at the official documentation, there is a lot of different attributes you can put onto an input.
Yep, let me pull that up real quick.
Yes. So, for example, if you've got a label, which is another form element, you can reference that and the two get linked together. There's also something called Aurelia tags, which help accessibility. You can mark it as disabled and various other bits and pieces. I don't think this is necessarily the best page for the example, but the Mozilla documentation is quite good. I think that
there we go. This is where that is. Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, I always go to the Mozilla documentation over anything else when I'm working directly with the HTML, and often with JavaScript as well.
Yep, exactly. Cool. So now we have our 4 IDs of input tag right here. And it says modify cat app/script.js. So it calls your Azure function with the 4 names as parameters. To save this file, I'm just going to click Command S, Control S, I believe, on Windows.
That's right.
To save.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, so I'm just going to walk through this code in a second, just in case you were not here when we coded this last time. So right here, we have an input. It's a button. So that makes it look like this. And then it's got a value of call yikes, which is that. It's called yikes because I think that's what it was in the previous step. So I just never bothered to change that. And this one is an ID. It's called button1. So if we go ahead and look at our JavaScript, and our JavaScript is linked to our HTML through this tag right here. So script/index.js, which means we're bringing in that JavaScript through that tag. And then we're going to go ahead and do const button. So we're going to go ahead and go into our document and get an element by their ID. Button1, this is going to grab this element right here. And all IDs are unique, so this can only match one element. Then after that, we're going to go ahead and type in button.add event listener. So this function right here is going to get executed whenever we click the item in button. Right, we called it button. We grab the element with button1. So whenever we click this button, this function is going to fire. So after that, we're going to go ahead and go. What we're going to do is we're going to grab ID name.value. Well, this is actually checking if we have blank names. So, but yeah, for this one, I think we can do this as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and delete this if statement right here because we're going to just assume that they're not going to type in a blank value because 4 if statements might get a bit, what's it called? Complex right here when we're trying to code. So after that, we can just say let cat1 is equal, or we can call this name1 is equal to name1.value. And then after this, we can say name. Oh, I did not mean to switch my terminal. I just entered some weird shortcut command that I have no idea what I just did, but name1, name2, name3, name4. There we go. Name2.
We can actually have those as consts rather than lets. So the difference between a const and a let is that a let allows you to change the value later on further in your code. But we're not going to be doing that. Each time this function runs, we're going to grab the value of name1 once, and we're not going to modify it. So
exactly. Yep. So after we do that, we have name1, name2, name3, name4. And then we're going to need to call our Azure function. So let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Azure. I'm going to refresh this page. And yeah, so what I deployed to the function app that I deployed the function we just wrote for cats, this right here, I deployed it to demo serverless camp. So I'm going to go into here, functions, go into 2cats, and then code plus test. Just I'm going to show you that it's the code that I just wrote, and for my own sanity to make sure that it actually is. So yeah, this is what we just wrote. And then I'm going to go, if we just open this, we should be able to see. I just scroll over, get function URL, go ahead and copy that URL. So that's like, it's something, it's the fetch URL that we're going to fetch to. It's our API endpoint, if we want to put it that way. So after that, I'm just going to go ahead and say const Azure URL. So this can be changed later. It's a constant. It's going to be a bit cleaner if we just put it this way. Then after this, we can say const again, actually. Const fetch URL. URL, we can call this. So I think we should do string interpolation here. How do you feel about that? Cool. So
yeah, I always like string interpolation, it seems to be a bit more of a natural fit than some of the other methods.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so to do string interpolation, it's kind of like is it called a backtick?
It is called a backtick.
Yes,
That's right.
there.
Yes, it looks a little bit like an apostrophe, but it is actually a separate character on the keyboard. Depending on your keyboard layout, may depend where that is. But on a sort of UK keyboard, it's just underneath the escape key on the left.
Yep.
I think on a Mac, it's in a slightly different place.
It's at least for my Mac, it's right under the escape key as well, right above the tab.
Okay.
Yep. So after that, this is essentially a string right here. So if I just type anything, it's just a string. But the way that string interpolation works is you can inject JavaScript into here, right? So the way to inject is if you just put a $ and then open and close brace. So anything in here is going to be evaluated as JavaScript before being concatenated into this string. So this will make sense in a second if I just put an Azure URL right here. And then after that, I can put in, I think it would be question mark, right? And then name1 is equal to.
Yeah, so the question mark denotes the start of what we call the query string. And then we're passing in parameter 1, which is called name1, and setting the value of that.
Yep.
And then we need to do the same for each of the others that we'll be doing.
Yep, this might get a bit repetitive. Name1, and then name2, name3 now. So
in this particular case, we are actually looking for 4 names. So it makes a lot of sense to name our variables, name1, name2, name3, and name4. But it's always good to give as descriptive names as possible to those variables. So if you had like first name and second name, for example, you should call it that rather than name1 and name2. Putting numbers at the end of your variables, unless you are actually looking for 1 and then 2 and then 3, it isn't necessarily ideal. But in this case, we are looking for 4, so it's perfectly valid to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So after this, we're going to go ahead and make an HTTP request. It's going to be a GET request to our.
I have just noticed a small thing that we did. So on that fetch URL, we put a question mark just after the as your URL.
Yes.
It is actually an ampersand that we need, or an and sign. And the reason for that is that the address already has a question mark in. So if you look at
I did not see that. Yes, it is right there. I did not notice that. Good catch.
Yeah, so it already has 1 query string parameter, and we're going to be adding in additional query string parameters. So that's why we need an and sign.
Yes, exactly. So we only have 1 question mark per ever query string.
That's right. And that shows the start of the query string. So the end of the address and the start of the query string.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, great catch there. So after that, we're going to go ahead and make our fetch request. So what we can say is, we can call this const actually. Const rest is equal to, can we just say fetch here, or do we have to say await fetch? If we use await, we'd have to make this async too as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and make this async, and then we're going to use await fetch because we're comfortable with that. So we're going to go ahead and say await fetch. Go ahead and pass in this fetch URL, and then we can say, it defaults to a GET request, but it's always good to be more explicit, more readable code. Go ahead and pass in a JSON object right here with the method key set to GET. Cool. After that, what we can say is const rest, const data is equal to await rest.json. So we're going to change whatever we get back into a JSON object. So notice that in our API endpoint, we're returning this body of a JSON object, right, with cat1 key as a key, and then cat1 this base64 string as the value. So after that, we're actually going to need to first create 4 image tags for this to work, because we need to set each of the 4 cats into their own image tags. So right here, I'm just going to go ahead and say, instead of having this placeholder right here, I'm going to delete that. ID is equal to image. Can we just say src is equal to blank string like that, and it will just be a blank image?
It won't be a blank image. It will be...
Oh, yeah, icon.
I think it will show a broken image, but I can't remember. We can have a look. We can test it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and try it. Oh,
it does.
Oh, if it's blank, it doesn't actually show the icon.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of that. Because most of the time you are setting it, so.
Yeah, exactly. The only reason we're not doing it is right here because we're going to do it in the JavaScript after we click call yikes.
Yeah.
So I believe it said image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4. So we're going to do a lot of copying and pasting. That's pretty cool. Image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4. That correspond to name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4. So whatever we enter in name 4, the cat image with that name is going to be in image 4. So the way that we're going to do this is, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this right there. Cool. So how are we going to do this? We can say document.get element by ID. My autocomplete will do that, I suppose. And then in this, we're going to pass in an ID. We're going to say image 1 right here. And then if you'll notice right here, we have something called SRC. And this just denotes like what image we're going to have in here, right? If just for example, I'm just going to find cool image online, I suppose. Oh, that's a cat. That fits right quite nicely. If I just click copy image address, I put that in this SRC right here. You'll notice that this is what shows what actual image is displayed. So we're going to need to change this SRC attribute based on our response. So we're going to go ahead, if you notice, this is called SRC, and this is an attribute, right? This is an attribute right here. We can say, since it's an attribute, we can say dot SRC right here. So now we're modifying this SRC attribute within image 1. After that, we can say equals. And then what we're going to need is we can say data dot cat1, I believe. But this is not going to work by itself. We need to tell this image that it's actually a base 64 image. And there's a short string that you have to append to the beginning of this, just to tell the image tag that it is base 64. And then we can say that with just a quote like this, and then a plus sign. So we're going to concatenate this again. We can call this data image slash PNG colon base 64 comma. I did not memorize that. I Googled this and I found it from online, and I just have it on another monitor so I can look at it. So don't try and memorize this. You can probably Google this from online, right, John?
Yeah, that's true. And actually, that's what happens a lot. It's not necessarily about remembering every single bit of syntax, every bit of code that you need. It's about knowing what to go and look for at the appropriate time. So yeah, don't ever feel like you've got to memorize reams and reams of things. And the tools do help you.
Exactly. That's why Google is there. It's amazing. So yeah, after we do that, go ahead and copy in that paste 4 times as well. Image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, cat 1, cat 2, cat 3, cat 4, like that. And then let's go ahead and try this. We can call this John, Ganning, Emily, Shreya. Click call yikes. Unfortunately, this is not going to work because the cat as a service API happens to be down right now. So we get 0 cats. But yeah, unfortunately, it's been down for almost every single video I've recorded. Right now, if we click give me a cat, it's not going to work because their API is down. So you can click this. It's going to say timed out. But yeah, which is kind of unfortunate. But this is, I believe, the code. So we don't actually have a way of testing this. And if we give it to CounselorBot, CounselorBot's going to say it's wrong as well because it's not going to find the base 64 string in there. So, but I believe that this is the code that we do need to.
Yeah, it looks correct. I think it's worth mentioning, actually, whenever we find ourselves copying and pasting lines of code and just modifying one little bit of it, it makes it a prime candidate for refactoring out into a function. So you could take this code and actually pull some of these out into separate functions to save us having to repeat ourselves. That's obviously slightly more complex, and this makes a really good demonstration of how to do it, how to do the basics. But if you want to go that step further, it's a really good thing to have a look, see where you've copied and pasted and just changed something slightly, and then extract it out into a functional, or what we call refactoring. And that's a technique we do a lot, is take the code that you've got that works once it works, and then modify it to make it easier to read or more efficient or whatever.
Yep, exactly. We could actually refactor this part right here. We can create a function that just takes in base 64 and it'll append this to the front of it. So we can If we want to do that right now, it'll take like a minute. But
yeah,
I think it's pretty good.
You could take the whole line in as a
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay,
yeah,
we can
put
call
the whole
this
line in. So
function get source, or we can
set
call this set source.
Yeah.
Of base 64.
Yeah.
I believe that's a good name. We can give it ID, and then we can give this base 64 string like that.
Yeah.
Then we can say that. So what we can say right here is similar to this. Refactoring this, I'm just going to. Ooh, we might also have to give it the cat number.
No.
Oh wait, no. We just call it on this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this right here, paste it in here, right? Copy base 64 string. Go ahead and pass in this ID because that's the ID. Then base 64 string instead of data.cat1, that's our base 64 string. So
yeah.
The good thing about this is instead of having this giant chunk of code right there, we can just go ahead and delete all of this, I believe, and then just pass in what we need. So this is our function call right here, open braces ID. We want to set the ID of image1 right here. And then the base 64 string is going to be data.cat1. So put a semicolon after that. And what's pretty nice is that we don't need any of these anymore. All we have to do is go into here, image1, image2, image3, image4, cat3, cat2. Right, so this makes it a lot cleaner. And also whenever you have to change something later on, like maybe let's say we made a typo in this string right here. It's not actually this. Maybe we needed something else after this to denote that it is base 64. This is going to be a lot easier to change and maintain in the long run, right, John?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about making it easy to read, easy to maintain, and in some cases more performant, depending on what you're doing as well.
Yep, exactly. This gateway finally chimed out. Thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I believe that's the code for this. Let's go ahead and just read this real quick. Functions, that's done.
It's interesting. You read a lot more code than you write. You might not realize that, but the amount of code samples you're reading online, looking at other people's code, work colleagues, or even when you join a company, the first thing you'll be doing is reading the code that's already there. So making the code easier for other people to read in the future is definitely worth it. And even for yourself, even going back like a week or two later to something you wrote previously, making it easy to understand is super important. And that's why we choose names that make sense and why we structure the code in a way that's easy to understand.
Yeah, exactly. Perfectly said. I'm just going to go do this real quick in the end. Create 4 image tags. We did that. Display the outputs of the Azure functions and images. That's what we did right here, setting the SRC attribute. That's done. And then update your committed changes to, so we can go ahead and actually commit these changes. I realize I have not demoed that. Only thing, CounselorBot will say this is wrong because the API endpoint that we're calling is down, but I'll just go ahead and demo how do we commit these changes. So first thing that we can do is I'm just going to type in get status just to make sure again that we're on the correct branch. To cat front end branch, I'm going to go ahead and copy that because we'll need it later on. We can say git add dot. So that's prepares your changes to be committed. Then we say git commit -m. After that, what we can say is what did we do? Add front end.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning the M stands for message. So what we're doing here is we've added all of our files to a staging area, and now we are committing those with the message that'll get saved that you can see later.
Yeah, exactly. Then after that, what we can say is enter, and then we say git push origin branch name to cats front end is what we want. Go ahead and click enter. And then if you go to GitHub, GitHub's actually pretty smart. Compare and pull request, create a pull request. And then this is going to be running your 2cats front end code. Yeah, that's basically all we have for this demo right here. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish, John?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope that helped. Yeah, let me end this broadcast.